Good morning, everyone. I am going to let people have just a moment to get situated. We still have some people who are joining the waiting room who will be admitted. But thank you all for being here today. We will be going through the applicant webinar for all of the BFA application. We'll go through a tour of the application in addition to answering any questions that you might have about the form, since you've had a little bit of time to look it over at this point. So if there are times where you have a question, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself, and that would give me an opportunity to invite you to ask that question. We are recording this webinar and it will be uploaded to the arts.ms.gov/build page on the MAC website. I'll put that URL in the chat. This web page has all the information for the Building Fund grant, including our past LOI and application webinars from last year. But we're going to go through this year because we always have new features year to year that are added into our grant system. So ways that we can also respond to feedback from prior years and make applications a little bit more streamlined and easier on your end. So you might also notice some changes on that if you applied last year. Okay, so what I'm going to do for most of this webinar is share my screen so that you can see exactly what it looks like on your end as an applicant in the system. So I'll go ahead and pull that up. And you can see this is a test screen. This isn't any application that's currently in the works, but it is for this year's application. When you log in to the grant system, your application should already be on your dashboard. When your LOI was approved, it automatically assigned that next form. So you don't have to come up here and hit apply again. What you'll do is select edit application here. And you'll see if you've been in the system before, this is your LOI from your first stage. If your application is approved, below application, there will be a final report section. So any further reporting or further interactions that we ask for you on this grant will be done in this little dashboard right here. And you can see last year I did a test person for FY23, so we should have some options to help move forward if you have responses from last year's application that you'd like to copy over. So, like I said, you've logged in. You can hit edit application in order to enter the form. You'll always have your contact information here at the top. One thing that I really like to point out is you have a tab here that lets you go see your LOI and see any past responses to questions that you submitted in that stage. There are some questions that you submitted in this stage that will copy over to this application period. You should be able to edit those responses if there have been any changes since you submitted your LOI. I will go ahead and point out while we're at the top here that we have a collaborate tool. If you are applying with a partner or applying with a partner on your staff who is helping you write the application, you can enter the email address for your partner here and give them permission to view, edit, or submit whatever level you think is most appropriate. And you can change that level of access at any time on your end by clicking the collaborate button. If I had collaborators on this, they would be listed above the email address invite here. So that would be where you go to edit those settings. And if you invite someone to collaborate on the application, that should carry forward at all stages of this process to allow them to collaborate on the final report as well. And if you at any point during the application or grant management period need to update the contact and move this request over to another user on your account, please reach out to Mac. We don't want to edit the information that was submitted earlier. We want to maintain fidelity of that data and add a new person and move this request to that new account rather than write over what was already entered. You can see at the top here, this is managed by a bunch of umbrella drop downs that we can go through in order. This first one is not asking you to provide anything, rather it's just giving you an overview of some of the features in this system. That includes, like I said, the collaborate button, but it also allows you to see things like the document viewer, which, because I don't have any uploads in this request, I don't have here. But if you want to review quickly every document that you've uploaded to the request, then you can do so by clicking document viewer and going through all of those previews. You can also download a list of all the questions or a PDF of your application, including all attachments, by clicking one of these two options. And that's all explained here. We also want to note that if you're submitting an uploaded item to our grant system, there are some file types that we can't work with because we're using Windows PCs. We're not able to open pages, numbers, or Keynote files that are unique to Apple computers. So you'll need to change those to a PDF or Word document in order to upload them. That's also because we can't guarantee that our panel reviewers will also have access to those file types. So you want to make those as easily accessible for anyone who's going to be reviewing your form. The first thing that we ask here is about your organization's information. And I understand that many of you are applying in partnership. If you're a city-owned building, you might have the city applying on behalf of the Arts Council. We try to specify at each point whether we are referring to the applicant or to the arts organization that's partnering on the request. So if you ever have any confusion about whose information we're looking for in a specific section, please reach out and call. The SAM.gov unique entity ID we ask for at the top of this application. We will copy this into your organization account registration once it's been submitted, but we will need it submitted as this right here during the application. If you do not have a SAM.gov unique entity ID, please reach out to MAC to figure out exactly what we need to do to move forward with your request. We aren't able to pay a grant to an organization that doesn't have this number. It's completely free to register for a UEI on SAM.gov. So again, if you need any assistance, there's a link here in the instructions, as well as a list of the registration help desk there. And you can see this is one of those questions that we asked you in the LOI. That question will carry over. You won't have to answer it again. We're asking, just general information about your request. A lot of these will branch out to further questions that we'll ask to follow up on this later in the form. So you can see here the building ownership copied over. And you'll notice in a lot of these project titles, this bolded part right here, there's an asterisk after that. That means that question is required. And if you try to submit the form without responding to that, it won't let you submit. We are asking that you provide the specific street address for your facility. That might not be your organization's mailing address, which is what we ask for when you register for your account. So just specify the address for the facility relevant to your proposal and your organization's mission. These longer response boxes that you can type out do have a character limit, but you also have the option to do some formatting. So you can highlight this, bold, italicize, or underline it. And for sections in the application, like your timeline, you can even do a bulleted list. This is really helpful for kind of listed items or anything that doesn't have to be a straight paragraph narrative form. I will note that if you copy from a Word document into the grant system, you want to make sure that that formatting copies over as well. Sometimes we'll get submissions where the bullets are paragraph form and all the bullets have been changed into O's that are flush with the first word. Sometimes that makes it very difficult for the panel to review the information. So you want to make sure it's formatted in the best way possible to present your information. We're also looking at the area around your facility. So we're looking for the city or county that this facility will serve and any relevant information about that area. If there is a lack of opportunity in the area for arts engagement, if you have specifics on representation or specific partnerships and collaborations that you want to note within the community, that would be important to put here too. But there's a section later about partnerships that will be more specific, so you can just name drop in this section and give us more details later. Many of our prompts will be a combination of these text box and the upload fields. This will give you the opportunity to provide context for these uploads. So we're asking you about your long-range plan. You know, when was it adopted? How was it developed? Who's involved? It doesn't have to be extensive. Just give us kind of an idea about how often and through what process you develop your strategic plan. And then we'll also ask for a copy of that strategic plan. Are there any questions on this first section where we're asking for organization information?
Kristen, this is John Dumoulin from the Gulfport Art Center. In the process of applying for other grants through e-grants, we've answered a lot of the demographic questions, and those aren't going to change, you know, for another application. Is there any way to read that stuff over?
There is actually, and I can show you how to copy the process or assist you in going through that on your end individually. It's not something that this preview will let me show, but near this collaborate button, there will be, if you have other requests in the system, which this account doesn't, a button that says copy process. So you would be able to select last year's FY23 BFA or even your operating grant and hit copy, and any question where the bolded name here, this question title is the same, will be copied over as a response.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if you have trouble with that, please reach out. It's a new feature that they added since last year. So this is, I think, the first grant round that we've really been able to have applicants engage with that tool. And if you didn't have an application last year, then that, you know, doesn't matter to you. Lisa, did you have a question? Oh, sorry, I just saw you raise your hand. All right. The next section is kind of more general information, but personnel related. We're looking for a list of your board members, and that is related directly to the applicant rather than the arts partner. Something that we were able to integrate since last year is a new feature called tables. This specific section took up 2 pages of scrolling last year, so it's a lot more you know, tightly formatted. I will say you want to enter these numbers correctly. If you put a decimal in here, it'll say invalid format and it won't let you submit the form. It only wants whole numbers. And I guess we don't have fractions of people, so that makes sense. Also double check that these numbers, they'll always equal your total number, but make sure this agrees with your list. This list can be something that you already have developed and upload, or you can type it directly into this box. You do not have to do both. Just one or the other. And then we'll ask for the same information of your board. We'll ask about your staff. You'll also be asked to provide a staff bio for the person who will be managing the project at your organization. So in most circumstances, that's the person who's listed as the project director on the account. If you are unsure about who to break out here in the staff bio, just reach out to us and we'll help you identify the most appropriate individual. And then this would be directly related to the question that you answered earlier, where you identify your organization's geographic area of service. So the city or county served, the area that your organization or your facility will support. You'll also break that out here. You can get the information from the US Census by putting it into their search tool. There's a link here to census.gov, so you'll be able to put in a zip code or address to get or a county name to get information. Is there a question? So you should be able to unmute yourself. It's the little microphone in the bottom right-hand corner, probably.
Okay, am I okay
Yes,
now?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. I kind of have worked with uh, the Como students as well as the Tate County, and of course, Como is in Panola County. And I have children who come to my summer enrichment programs and things that we do. And then I once had a great friend who was a librarian there, and we did a lot of things together. And I didn't know if I would be breaking any rules if I geographically mention that area, or should I stick with Tate County since that is the area where the center is. But when I first started the center, I wrote that it was to serve the Gravel Spring, Springville community and surrounding areas of Como and of course Coldwater. Well, Coldwater is in Tate County, but Como isn't. And I wanted to know, do I need to leave that out on this application?
Sure. So it's important for you to self-determine the community that you serve. If you
Mhm.
say that you equally serve the residents of Tate County and what was the other group that you
Panola.
Panola, that's what I thought. Okay, if you equally serve Tate and Panola counties, you can list both, but if you're primarily serving Tate County with some programs reaching out, you can mention right here that these demographic numbers, because we're going to give you a section to give context to your numbers. You
Okay.
can mention that these numbers are referring to Tate County, but we also pull in attendees from surrounding counties. And that way you don't have to try to itemize half of one county and half of another, because I know that's going to be difficult on your end. And I'm not sure how valuable it'll be on the panelist end either. So I think that maybe focusing on Tate County and then giving that little bit of context here. And you
Oh,
can see where we have context listed, that's not required. You can give context to these numbers. You're not required to, nor will you be penalized in any way for failing to do so. But if you feel like there's some bits that could very well benefit from added explanation here or in your budget or really anywhere we ask you to give quantitative information, that would be an option for you. And Bernice, I see your message about pictures. I can talk about that a little bit once we get to the picture section of the application, but I'll remember that. So You can navigate this application through the drop downs here. We've done demographics. The next section is really focused on the arts programming partner. So this is the organization that is providing arts programs in that facility, or will be once it's been constructed or completed. We mostly are focusing on in-person events for this. All the numbers are related to in-person events completed during the calendar year of 2022, since we have a completed year there. You can itemize here in your list any activities that you do virtually, but please don't include those in your numbers. Those do specify in person only. Any field that you see with this pound symbol, the number sign, it wants you to put just those whole numbers. Again, if you put a decimal or a comma, it'll say invalid format. So it just wants the numbers strictly presented as they are there. And yeah, it'll do this the second that the error is made. So if you notice this little red box, you can address it now. But if you don't notice it and you get all the way down to submitting your application, it'll give you a box above the submit button with a list of errors for you to scroll back up and find their corresponding red boxes here. And if you get a box and you're not sure how to fix it, like I said, you can give us a call. Most of the time it's something format related. So this is, again, more demographics, but this is related to the artists who are hired. This is just giving us a really good idea of who will be coming in and out of this space and benefiting from it in terms of scale and demographics. This is all just the artist demographics post the activities. The next section is really the most important section. It's what is going to be the basis for the criteria that used to score the applications. You can see I have a submission here already. That's from the LOI. All of these fields you can do text formatting in. You can also note we have required fields. Most everything here is required, but you can see here, we have a question that's not required that is new this year. This allows organizations who are applying for a project that will continue on past the BFA project period. So you might not be getting to a complete building, or you might not be getting to a completely completed renovation, but this project proposal will support a phase of that. So this is where you can give context as to what the final vision is, so that the rest of your narrative can focus on what's going to be accomplished during the project period and with the grant funds. You will not get penalized if you're not doing a project involving phases. It's just we wanted to be able to give opportunities for people who are to explain that more completely. Your project start and end date did not copy over from the LOI, and that's because we want to give people the opportunity to make this align with your timeline, because you did not have maybe as much information at the time of LOI that you now have during the application period. So what we're looking for here is specific dates for when you plan to start your construction project, or you might be getting plans and specs drawn up whenever your activities are going to begin. We have a goal of submitting your first installment 2 weeks before this date. So it's important for us to know when that is, and also when you expect to have all of the grant funds expended and your proposed activities completed by. If you list the full project period, you're going to want to have a breakdown in this project timeline that identifies what's going to happen at each stage throughout that project period. You want to see if you're going to be giving yourself any wiggle room for something to be late or delayed. If you don't have the cash match on hand, you want to include your fundraising timeline in this. It's not just your construction timeline if you're not starting, right off the bat. So anything that is going to go into your ability to accomplish this building project. So, if you need to get permits, if you need to engage professionals, if you haven't gotten your architect already, we want to see goal dates for when that will happen. And it doesn't have to be a specific day. It doesn't have to be November 8th, 2024, but it could be, November 24, this will have been done. After this, we get more into the description of the review criteria and the project. This is pretty much identical to last year. So it goes through, and we went over this at the LOI webinar as well, your project plan, your project professionals, your organization's capacity to complete the project, the potential impact of the project, and the artistic quality. And the artistic quality isn't referring to, the quality of the architect you secured. It's the quality of the arts programming that'll happen in the space. It's not how pretty the building's going to be when it's finished. It's what's going to happen in that space. So the first of the narrative questions asks you to identify some general information about your project, why this project fits the needs of your organization and the needs of your community, to describe the accessibility of the building to the people that will be utilizing the space. And if your project is geared towards making the space more accessible, and also identify and describe the current state of the building, the planned renovation, and the planned renovations, and what that end product for this project is going to look like. Your project professionals, you don't have to have engaged at the time of application. This is the architects, building contractors, and any other professionals who are going to work on the project. If you have identified them, please include their qualifications or experience. You can give us their resume or a CV by uploading that here. If you have not identified who you will be working with, you can identify the process you will use to select architects, contractors, and other professionals. What qualifications are you looking for? For example, if you're in a historic district or in a historic building, you might want to identify and have a criteria that the people you engage have experience working with historical structures. If you have any architectural studies available, you can also submit that, but as you can see, that's an optional field, and not having that will not impact your review criteria, because I believe one of the projects you can apply to do is to get these architectural studies. So we're here to help at any stage of your project. Your organization's capacity is, this is where we're looking at how likely it is that this project will be completed within the time frame. So it's looking at who's going to manage the building project, who's going, the staff structure for the current facility, and if that will change depending on the expansion or construction of a new facility, identifying your fundraising plan, and if applicable, like if, for example, the new expansion on your space allows you to collect more revenue from venue rentals, you could identify that this will increase your revenue streams here. Or if the project or expansion will lead to an increase in your overall operating or maintenance expenses, you can also identify your plan to increase income to support those changes here. I know that feels like a lot, so if anyone has any questions on that, just let me know. All right, next is the impact of the project. This is where you'll identify your arts programming, beyond the list, just how you're going to maintain the level of programming that you submitted earlier while the project is being completed. Some good examples I saw of this last year were where, you know, maybe a community theater that's doing some work on their roof or work refinishing their seating, waited and timed their renovations for their off season, so it would not impact their overall programming. And it's okay if it does, but we want to see if it will. This will also have you identify how often or frequent the artistic programming will be had in that space. So it allows you to say, we did this in 2022 and we'll be able to do more with this additional space. Artistic quality is the final part of the narrative. And these are all kind of short answer. We're not looking for, 3 sentences. We're looking for longer than that, but it's not, 2 pages per box. It doesn't need to be that long. Just to address each of these bullet points as they apply to your project. And, some of them say if applicable, and if it doesn't apply to your project, you don't have to address that one. You could even put your narrative in bullet points. It says, this is me answering this question. This is me answering the next one, if that would help you. And it might. It can really improve clarity. Artistic quality is looking again at the arts programming that was listed earlier in the application, identifying what type of artists are involved. Those people that you itemized earlier, tell us who they are and what they are to you and your community. And also you can identify ways that you evaluate your programming to help the community have a say in how that programming is carried forward and done in years as they continue. Are there any questions on the narrative? You can see at the top, the review criteria is broken out. This is project plan. Project plan's worth 20 points. So you can see exactly how each of these impacts your review score. And all the other uploads and things elsewhere in the applications go to support their quantitative data that go to support the things that are in your narrative. You can see this is one of those things from the LOI that if you answered it, it'll show up. If it didn't apply to you, it's not going to show up. All right, I will answer our question about images from earlier. You can upload your file by clicking this button, and you'll select the picture from your desktop there. The quality is going to be the same on your end as on ours. So if it looks pixelated and blurry, it'll be pixelated and blurry on our end. I can give you some target ranges for your dots per inch or resolution for your images, if that would be helpful. But for the most part, we're looking for is this something that we're able to see clearly and understand why it's included? I think last year we had more images that we requested, and we were getting a lot that weren't really relevant to the section of the building that the renovations were going to be completed on. So try to focus on showing the building in relation to this project. If you're getting work done on the roof, show us the outside of the roof, the inside of the roof, show us some close-ups of areas that are really rough, or show us the inside of the building where there's been damage because of the roof. If you're not working in the bathrooms, we don't need to see the bathrooms. So that's just some feedback there. We do ask that at least one of these images is an aerial perspective from Google Maps. We allow 4 megabytes per image because there's a limit on how much storage each application can take. So if maybe you were working with a really high-res image that was a large file that was compressed down, the quality might have gone down. So again, I would just have someone download all the pictures once they've been uploaded and take a look at exactly what's there, because that's what's going to be shown up on our end. This text box at the bottom, you can use the ordered list button to give us a list of kind of a table of contents for what the pictures are. And that gets around, you having to title every picture to be something specific. Are there any questions about the images that we ask for? Yes, and you should be able to unmute.
Yes,
Hey,
is this going to be where we can upload our quotes if we received quotes for electronic work or for technology or anything that doesn't have images?
So this is specifically looking for images of your building. If you want to
Okay.
include the quotes, I would recommend you put them in the supplementals section. That's the kind of thing that we ask for in the kind of invoices and quotes. That's the kind of documentation we ask for in the final report, but we don't necessarily ask for quotes up front in the application. It's not required. You can provide that though as a supplemental document.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, this section should entirely relate to pictures of the facility. And I saw someone else had a question as well.
Yeah, this is Philip Boleyn from the Mississippi Arts and Entertainment Experience.
Yes.
Just a quick question. Are we able to include schematic graphics of the facility, especially the changes that we're trying to do?
Yes. So in the project narrative section, there's an upload for architectural studies right here. I would recommend you put those there. It's right under your project professionals and the heart of your narrative. And I think that would be very relevant for that section of the application.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. I see, Betsy, that you have a question. Is this Betsy Ross? Which Betsy? You can unmute yourself.
It is. I don't know why my hand raised again. You answered it.
Oh, okay, great. I can
Thanks.
lower your hand. Great. Any other questions on facility images? Wayne.
All right, and you might have just answered it, but I want to make sure I understand. So we already have a project package complete of like architectural renderings, like this is what we're proposing, and now we have to get down to hiring the architect to do the budget, the costing, the request packet, all of that is what we're focusing on for this, so it'll be a phase. So in our proposal to get authorization from History and Archives, we already had to do, this is what we're proposing the design to look like, but we didn't get down to the actual budget and construction documents. So would you want that in the architectural studies or broken out in the photos? Because it's a whole kind of description package of this is why we're using these materials or proposing these, with shots and renderings and designs of the proposed space.
Sure, I would put that here under architectural studies. The focus of the images section is strictly, this is broken mortar. This is a bathroom that is not this is a bathroom that isn't up to code. Or you can even and I saw someone do this very effectively last year, put those images into a PowerPoint and use the arrow button, the arrow clip art, to point out exactly what you're wanting the panelists to see out of that image, because not every panelist is an architect. So it might be helpful for you to point out, hey, this is where the building joints aren't meeting correctly. This is where the envelope of the structure is not watertight. So you can even put text over those pictures and really point out exactly what in that image, if it's not inherently obvious. Yeah. Jamie.
Hey everyone, our building that we are looking at doing has been vacant for years and it was in terrible shape. So I have pictures when we first went in the building and like cleaned it up, and it showed what a terrible mess it was. We have used the building for the last few years for this Santa's workshops. It was like this really cool Christmas thing. That's not at all what we're going to be using the building for going forward. We have since taken all the moved Santa out and gutted the building. And it's this empty shell of the building. Do you recommend starting from the beginning of the uploading of the art images, like what it actually looked like the day you walked in, or now that it's a shell and what we're going forward?
I think that the perspective of the panelist is this is what they want to see what it looks like right now. But I think that I would suggest, since you've been in progress with this building and getting it rehabbed, that you include some of those before we got started comparison images as a supplemental to show we were able to take it this far and we want to get it to the next phase with BFA support. So I think that maybe not in this section right here, because this is focusing on the current status of the building, but including them as a supplemental that says, you know, this is what it looked like when we got to it, and this is how good we've got it without BFA support. And we just need a little extra to push us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. And we're on to everyone's favorite section, the budget. There is some changes in this section, and by changes, I mean we took some stuff out. So you don't have to do quite as much as you had to last year. There is also a budget context. Again, you'll see that's not required, but if you want to provide further context on your, you know, projected income, for example, or if you want to identify the funding sources more specifically for your grant, you can do that here. The budget form itself is a MAC form that we have created, and we ask that you submit your project budget according to the form that we have created. The itemization can look however you want it to, however looks best for you. This is the form. It's fillable. If I put $12 here, it'll calculate that for me. These numbers down here, your cash match, MAC grant, and total project expenses, those should match what you are asking for in terms of your award amount. So if you're asking for, you know, $60,000, the MAC grant column should be 60,000. Let's see. There is an example of a completed BFA budget form that shows a $350,000 project with a 60% match, or a 40% match, 60% MAC grant. And it also identifies the income sources right here and whether those are on hand or pledged. This year, the application is, the budget form is giving you one additional option. You can write on hand, pledged, or to be fundraised. So if you have a December fundraiser that will be used to support your event, you can put to be fundraised, December fundraiser. I'll fix that. And you'll download the form here. You'll want to make sure you're not doing what I'm doing. Don't complete it in your browser. You want to open it on the desktop app. That way it'll save all the information that you put into it, because otherwise you'll just end up downloading another blank version of the form and uploading that. So you want to make sure that you're not completing it in the browser. If you use an Apple computer, I would make sure that you double check that you're completing the budget form in Adobe. Adobe Reader is a free application that is linked at the top of your application form in that information section. It will make sure that all of those numbers and calculations work correctly. I've noticed that the preview for PDFs on Apple computers tend to mess with the formatting of e-fillable PDFs through Adobe. So I just want to get ahead of any issues that people might potentially have with that, because I know the numbers are so fidgety. There's the link to Adobe. Once you've finished, you want to save your file, close it, and then upload it. the same way you've been uploading everything else. You can see again, budget itemization here. You'll want to see this example. And like I said, this is, you know, a Mac example of how you might format it. You can do it however best you like, as long as it's easily relatable to your project budget. And these expenses and this income is entirely limited to your project budget. This is your MAC grant and the cash match, which will all be expended during the project period. So if you're applying for a phase and you estimate that the overall project to get you to the finish line is going to cost $1.4 million, but you're only going to spend $800,000 before June 30th, 2025, then you need to limit it back to what you're going to be using during this project period. Any questions? John?
Yeah, thank you. Could you be a little more specific about that? Like, so the total of my project's 4 million, but I'm thinking about applying for one segment of the build, like just the gathering pavilion, which will be the most public space. Should I mention the whole of the 4 million or just the gathering pavilion?
So for the budget, you're going to only want to include what's going to happen between November 2023 and June 25.
Okay.
There's that section earlier in the form where you can identify the where is that? Well, it was about the phase.
Okay, well, we wouldn't be phased. It would all be completed by then. So I'm just
Okay,
asking
and that's
about
fine.
which. Okay, so should I reflect the whole of the project or just the project where the public programming is taking place?
For yours, from what I understand, I would focus on the section where the public programming is taking place.
Okay.
How I understand your facility is kind of structured.
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's see here. These are asking you to take the numbers that are in your budget form, this number, and this number, and putting them here. That allows us to export those numbers because we can't pull data that is directly into an upload. And it allows us to check those numbers instantly instead of having to do math one by one. I really appreciate it when y'all don't make me do math one by one over 70 applications. So that really helps me out. Just make sure that these numbers match what's in your budget form. And there is a example of, let's see. Well, it's on the MAC BFA page. It's somewhere in here where it breaks out exactly how much you can apply for in terms of how much you're matching. You can, of course, match more than 40%, but this is a quick cheat sheet that'll allow you to check, okay, my project is 100,000. I can't ask for more than 60. All right, Kay, I see you there. What's your question?
Okay, this is Kay from the Piney Woods community, and we have a national foundation that could contribute matching funds, but I'm wondering if that foundation share can go toward programming. I'm thinking from what you said, no.
No, it needs to be a match on this project. The match needs to also be building funds that are going towards the construction project.
It has to be building. It can't be the arts project itself.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be operating expenses either, not the general operating
No.
expenses for the organization. So that's correct. In addition to these numbers, which all relate back to your building project, we also ask for an operating budget for that shows your most completed most recently completed fiscal year, your current fiscal year, which we understand will have estimates, and your estimates for next fiscal year. So this, if you receive operating grants from the Arts Commission, is the same as Mac's operating grant budget form, and you can use what you gave us in March. If you've never seen Mac's operating grant budget form, I can share that with you, but you can put your operating budget into whatever format you would like, or, you know, export of whatever accounting system that you use, whatever's easiest for you to provide. And this is reflecting, again, the applying organization's figures. That's who's listed as the applicant, not the arts partner. And I said, we try to specify that anywhere in the application. This is all the numbers we're asking for. We're not asking for an audit. We're not asking for anything additional, just the project budget and your operating budget. So if you have any questions on budget and numbers, I'm going to ask you to ask that now before we move on.
I have a question, Kristen.
Yes.
So I see there's a box down here for supplemental material. So maybe this is where that would go. But if we were to have project estimates from the architect, for example, like their own sort of estimate outline, is that something that we could upload at any point here, or is that reflected somewhere?
I would put that in the supplementals section. The budget it's the only uploads available there are for your itemization, project budget, and your operating budget. So there's not really any extra space for you to put that in where it wouldn't knock out something that's already been submitted. And this does give me a chance to bring up, if you upload something and then hit upload again and select a second thing, it erases the first thing. You only get one file per button. So that's why you have 3 buttons right here. You can submit up to 25 pages of supplementals. That can be quotes from contracted personnel, like we've mentioned. It can be images of the building as it's developed throughout history to give kind of a longevity context. It can be images from recent arts programs that were hosted in this space. It can be brochures and promotions for your major events through your arts organization. Whatever materials best showcase your work as an arts group throughout the year. You can also include links to websites, YouTubes, or other platforms, but I would recommend, if you include a link, you know, make it to a specific page or direct them to what content on that page you think is relevant. Because if we get a link that's just your organization's overall page, we'll poke around, but we might not see that thing that you wanted us to see specifically. So if there's something specific you want them to see, link directly to that page rather than the home page. Even provide a little note saying you can see our X here. And I've seen all kinds of supplementals. It's always interesting. It's the place that gives you the chance to say, this is something you didn't ask me about, but I think it's really important that you know and consider it when looking at funding. And that's the meat of the entire application. The rest of this, your legislative districts, this is something that you can go to gov.org. If you don't know your districts, put your address in, it'll pop those numbers back out at you. Please make sure that those numbers are correct. We do go through at the end of the year to review and fix them. The most common error is swapping your House and Senate district. So be aware that the state Senate is the upper chamber and the state House is the lower chamber. Make sure that you're entering those numbers in the right box, because otherwise we're totally flopped. And we want to be able to identify to legislators who have a project coming into their district that's happening, so that we can maintain legislative support for continued BFA rounds. So these legislative districts, while they're at the end, they're also really important for Mac's ability to request additional BFA funds throughout years in the future. The last bit is our signatures. So from the applicant standpoint, the person who's been filling out the application, that's the project director. If you're using a grant writer, you can list the person who will actually be managing the project here, and they will need to reach out to us so that we can reassign the request to them once everything is processed. That way the communications are going to them rather than a grant writer. And ideally, we would have it set up like that already. If you're using a grant writer and they're the primary contact in your account, please reach out, because I do want to fix that. It's not a big deal. You'll type the project director's name, the project director's title as it relates to their organization, and the date that you're submitting. And then you'll type the email of the person who's serving as authorizing official. And the authorizing official and the project director cannot be the same person. They need to be two separate people. They are someone who has, let me see, just seeing this request to Zoom more. The project director is who we can contact if we have a day-to-day question about the status of the grant, who we'll touch base with for interim reports during the grant period. The authorizing official is someone with fiscal authority at the organization, like the board president, or the executive director, as long as that's not who the project director is. You put their email address in here, you'll hit compose email. All right. And this is, you don't have to be specific in this email. You can just say, please see email to sign. This triggers our system to send that address an email with a link and instructions on how they can then type their name in to see. You can submit once you have put their email address in and sent that email. They don't have to have signed. You can go ahead and submit. After you submit, you cannot change anything. If you submit before you mean to, you can reach out to Mac and we'll put it back in draft for you, but we won't put things back in draft after the deadline for the application. So if you wind up accidentally hitting submit, which happens, just let us know. Was there a question?
Go back and share the two roles you were saying, that screen real quick, where you were saying the two different roles.
Yes. Authorizing official and project director. And if you don't know who is what for your organization currently, you can reach out. New grantees. Your project director is who is filling out the application, the person whose name is listed on the account. Your authorizing official will be set up when you send this email. So that's how we'll get your authorizing official for the first time. Teresa, did you have a question? All right, I guess not. So that's the full application form. It's a little bit shorter than last year. Some of the new ways that we were able to format the questions also greatly reduced the length. If you are interested in having your help copying your application over, what I can do is send an email to anyone who had an application last year who is currently in the system this year for an FY24 grant. I can send you a step-by-step with screenshots. That way you don't have to reach out. You can just wait for that to hit your inbox a little later today. All right, are there any final questions about the application, the process, where we go after you hit submit? Okay. Well, this form is due August 25th by 11:59 p.m. We'll be looking for the authorizing officials to have signed off on all of these within 24 hours of that deadline. So you do have a small grace period, but it needs to be submitted. So that's why I was specific about you can submit before your authorizing official signs. If you have a problem on the day of deadline that is after max business hours have concluded, you can reach out via voicemail or email to let us know you had a technical question that was preventing you from being able to submit. Wayne, why don't you go ahead and unmute?
So what is the panel review process? Who's reviewing them? That's what I'm interested in, because I'm wondering how technical to get in some of the writing.
Sure, I can tell you who, I can tell you what kind of we're looking for in panelists. I can't identify who the panelists will be prior to the panel, but we do look for an architect specifically. It's not all architects on the panel, but we have at least one person who's an architect or a building contractor. We have at least one person who is a representative of an arts organization that would be sort of in the grouping of this person could be an applicant, but they're not, because if they are, they can't be a panelist. So we're looking at somebody who's similarly in the arts industry, who kind of understands the perspective of the applicant. We're also looking to have someone who basically is more of a numbers, financially minded person to review the budgets and capacity. And I think last year we also had a representative who was from the perspective of working with historic buildings and historic structures. So that's the type of experience that we look for in panelists, but we haven't at this point identified who the panel is. And Lauren, are you on the line? I was going to say you could also.
Yeah, I'm Kristen.
Yeah, hi. Lauren is our director of grants, and after looking at the volume of applications we had this year and the length of time it took to panel last year, we have decided to handle the panel a little bit differently. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Lauren?
Sure. Until we get all of the applications in, but we've kind of noticed a clear break in the different tiers of budget requests or grant requests. And so we're thinking of breaking this up into likely two panels, one with the higher dollar amount requests and one with the smaller dollar amount requests. That way panelists are not having to look at like a very large building project and then maybe just replacing window awnings, for example. And so that way the project sizes will be more similar in those two different panels, and the panelists won't have to review 50 applications. So hopefully they'll be able to spend a little more time with each application individually.
So we are looking at, instead of having one panel where everything's paneled in a group, we'll be grouping these into two separate panels that'll likely happen on consecutive days. It might be with the same group of panelists, or it might be with two separate groups that have similar experience and expertise. We'll be kind of identifying that while y'all are filling out your applications. Albert. I can't hear you. I still can't hear you on our end. I don't know, maybe the mic selected isn't the right device for your input. But if you type your question into the chat, I can respond that way. And like Lauren said, we had kind of a natural break. It was almost an even split between kind of 250 and up and 250 and below. So that seemed like a natural place to break these up. I see your question. You do not have to have invoices from contractors. Actually, if you're getting an invoice, that means the work's already been done. which the work has to be completed during the project period to be eligible for BFA funding. You can have quotes if you want to include them as supplemental materials, but we're looking at your budget that you provide in terms of, yeah, good. I just wanted to make sure whatever it's a really common thing to mix up quotes and invoices, but when it means such a big difference on our end, I want to make sure we're being clear on all fronts. So yes, you can include quotes if you have that. If you don't, what I would recommend you do in those sections where it asks about who you have engaged is identify the process by which you will make those personnel selections. What are you looking for in terms of experience and expertise for a person that will be completing this work for you? And by what point you expect to have that person engaged. So if you don't have them engaged, it should be in your timeline when you expect that to happen. Are there any final questions? And like always, you can reach out during the application round to myself, to Lauren, or to Elaine Maisel, who's our contractor. Our contact information was in the invitation that we sent to join this webinar today. If you need any assistance, please reach out. We're here to help. We want, and this is always my goal, for you to have the best opportunity with this application, give you the advice that lets you put your best foot forward. Lori.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good. You know, I'm a new user, and so I apologize for others who may be accustomed. You mentioned referenced earlier, do not complete the application while in your browser. So I do have a login page. Is that the app you're referencing, or is there something else should
So I think you got swapped up there. Don't complete the budget form in your browser. Please complete the application in your browser. There's not another way to do that part. But when you download a PDF, you see how it opens up a tab with that PDF here in my browser. I want to open that in the application itself. And I don't think you can see it in Adobe. Instead of getting it out through the browser. I just noticed that it tends to mess people up on the budget numbers, and if the numbers are hard to read, it's easy to make a mistake, and if there's mistakes in it, it doesn't reflect well on the project. So.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you, Lori. All right, like I said, we'll make a recording of this webinar available on Mac's website. It probably won't be up until later this afternoon to tomorrow afternoon. Thank you all for taking the time to meet with us today and go over this form. I really want to equip you best to move into this process. Look forward to hearing from you all, and good luck.
Thank you.